Good morning. I'm Brad DeLong, and this is my morning coffee. Today, I'm in a relatively bad mood. So let me explain a large part of what I dislike America's press corps today. Let me explain a large part about what I dislike about America's press corps today by trashing one of our best financial reporters, Joseph Nocera. A little background. Dr. David Graham, Associate Director for Science and Medicine in the Food and Drug Administration's Office of Drug Safety, said back in 2004 that we have 30,000 excess deaths from Vioxx. We have 30,000 dead of heart attacks who would have lived had they been taking something else, than Vioxx. Now, Merck, the company that made Vioxx, has reached a $5 billion settlement with all those suing it. This $5 billion settlement, it amounts to $170,000 per extra death cost. This doesn't seem to me to be grossly out of line on the high side as a sanction on a penalty on a company whose marketing export department really did not want any warning labels on Vioxx warning anybody about anything. Yet it's the usually reliable Joseph Nocera who has a very different take on it. That Nocera writes, quote, "They had the kits ready to go. The trial package, they called it. The plaintiff's bar always develops a trial kit when a mass tort gets to a certain point. It's one of those weapons lawyers use to put pressure on the company they are attacking. The big-time lawyers who bring the early cases wind up spending $1 million to $1.5 million developing their case. Expert witnesses, discovery, depositions, jury consultants, and they put their collective knowledge in a neat little package of documents and videotape depositions and suggest lines of attacks so that all other lawyers who have sued the same company can partake of their acquired scholarship and bring their own trials for a lot less money. Quote, ours would have allowed a lawyer to try a legitimate case for under $200,000, said Mr. Herman. With no small touch of pride. He was talking, of course, about the Vioxx litigation. Mr. Herman, Joseph Nocera says, has 120 of the 27,000 cases, that's right, 27,000 that were brought against Merck, which took Vioxx off the market 3 years ago after a study made it clear the medication increased the risk of heart attack or stroke. Nocera goes on. A handful of lucky people who may well have been victims of their own bad habits, and not of Vioxx, won large sums of money. Although they haven't seen a penny yet, every case the plaintiffs won is on appeal. And some people who may well have suffered because of Vioxx lost their cases and didn't get a penny. How does such a system even approximate justice? And he concludes, as for the plaintiffs' lawyers, they are likely to pocket around $1.5 billion of the settlement money, which means that Merck will wind up feeding the beast, just like every other company that finds itself embroiled in a mass tort. That money will go to funding the next mass tort. Now, it's clear that Nocera doesn't like the lawyers bringing the cases against Merck and for Vioxx, and that he doesn't like many of the plaintiffs, the, quote, handful of lucky people who are somehow also victims of their own bad habits. Now, it seems to me that a good newspaper story on this would answer 3 questions about all of these Merck-Vioxx cases in the settlement. The first, is the settlement too large or too small as a sanction on Merck, as a 2x4 to the head of the CEO to make sure that he understands that his job is to curb the enthusiasm of his marketing department when he has a new product with dangerous side effects? We don't want people advertising and encouraging people to take drugs until they've assessed what the side effects are likely to be. Is this a big enough 2x4 to the CEO of Merck? 2, are the lawyers' fees too large or too small? Have we given the plaintiffs' lawyers too much of an incentive to crank up this case machine, this mass tort machine, as a way of providing drug companies with an incentive to do the right thing? 3, does the settlement money actually get to the people who were harmed, to the victims, or to their survivors? My answers in this particular instance to these three questions right now are to 1, probably about right. It seems like the settlement has magnitude, neither grossly too small nor grossly too large. My answer to number 2 is I don't know whether the rewards to this are too high for lawyers, but I fear they might be too large and would be anxious to learn about it. And my answer to question 3 is the settlement money goes somewhat to people who deserve it, but a lot of it drifts out elsewhere into the system. Now, my first and my biggest beef with Joseph Nocera is that his story does nothing to help me get better answers to any of these questions. My second beef is that his story pushes a less informed reader than me, someone who takes this as a straightforward first look at a subject. It pushes a less informed reader toward answers too large, and no, for my questions 1, 2, and 3 respectively, that are largely wrong. My third beef is that Nocera doesn't set out any ideas about how one might create a better system. My fourth beef is that Joseph Nocera pushes readers toward wrong answers by playing a version of intellectual three-card Monte. If you're going to make a big deal about how large the 27,000 case number is, you have a moral obligation to set it alongside the 30,000 net excess heart attacks death number. These are big bucks. And my fifth beef? My fifth beef is that Nocera does damned well that he has a moral obligation to raise the level of the debate about financial and regulation in various forms, and economic regulation, and he knows damned well that he's ducking the obligation with stories like this. Why, oh why, can't we have a better press corps in this country? I'm Brad DeLong. This is my morning coffee.